The CFO didn't look at me when he said it. I watched him stare at the projected loss report on the screen. I saw the red numbers glowing. I heard him announce to the entire board meeting. This failure traces back to one person. Then I watched him turn. I felt his eyes land on me. I noticed 30 other pairs of eyes follow his gaze. I saw executives. I recognized legal team members. I spotted HR representatives. I remembered these were people who had smiled at me in the hallway just days before. The number glowed red on the screen behind the CFO. I read it even though I'd already memorized it. $18.4 million lost. I saw my name sit beneath that number. I watched it displayed for everyone to see. I felt the weight of that accusation settle on my shoulders. For a moment I felt like the room had lost all its air. I heard nothing but the hum of the projector. I noticed nobody moved. I realized everyone was staring at me. Then I heard the CEO speak. His voice cut through the silence. We'll begin a formal investigation into this matter immediately. I felt my stomach drop. I knew what that meant. I understood I'd just become the company's scapegoat. I recognized they'd already decided I was the problem before any investigation even started. Just like that, everything I'd built over 8 years was about to collapse. My name is Maya Chambers. I'm a senior operations manager. I've worked at this company for 8 years. I have 0 disciplinary actions on my record. I've received consistent top-tier performance reviews every single year. I wasn't the flashy type. I never played office politics. I didn't golf with executives or attend happy hours to network. I simply did my job well. I was the person who fixed problems quietly. I worked behind the scenes so other people could present solutions to upper management. I made sure operations ran smoothly while directors took credit for the results. I didn't mind that arrangement. I preferred working to schmoozing. I valued competence over connections. I believed good work spoke for itself. I was wrong about that last part. I learned that lesson the hard way when the numbers collapsed and everyone needed someone to blame. I'd spent 8 years building a reputation for reliability. I'd established myself as someone who could be trusted with complex problems. I'd proven my value through consistent results. Until the day $18.4 million disappeared. Until the day the entire executive team gathered in a conference room to find a culprit. Until the day they decided that culprit was me. I sat in that conference room and felt everything I'd worked for crumble. I watched my career implode in real time. I understood that in corporate America, being competent wasn't enough. Having a good record wasn't protection. When something went wrong, they needed a name to attach to the failure. They chose mine. By noon, the story had already spread throughout the entire building. I walked to the break room for coffee and noticed conversations stop when I entered. I saw people glance at me and then quickly look away. I felt their judgment follow me down every hallway. I checked my phone and saw text messages from coworkers. Most were brief. Are you okay? What happened? Some people said nothing at all. I noticed several colleagues who normally ate lunch with me suddenly had other plans. I returned to my desk and opened my laptop. I saw calendar invites disappearing from my schedule. Meetings I'd been included in for months were suddenly happening without me. I watched my Slack channels go quiet whenever I posted a question. The narrative had solidified quickly. I heard it in whispers. I saw it in the way people avoided eye contact. I understood what story they were telling each other. Daniel approved a risky vendor contract. Daniel ignored multiple warning signs. Daniel made decisions that cost the company millions. Daniel was responsible for the loss. The story was clean. I recognized it was convenient. I saw how easily it explained everything. One person made bad choices. One person failed to listen. One person was to blame. What nobody mentioned in these whispered conversations was simple. I didn't have final approval authority on contracts that size. I never had that power. I couldn't have signed off on an $18 million deal even if I wanted to. But someone else could. Someone else did. And that someone was staying very quiet while I took all the heat. That someone was Mark Ellison. I knew him as Director of Strategic Partnerships. I'd watched him work at the company for 6 years. I recognized he was charismatic. I noticed executives loved him. I'd heard he golfed with the CFO every weekend. Mark spoke next in that board meeting. I watched him stand up slowly. I heard his voice come out soft and measured. I saw him project concern and disappointment. I raised objections about this vendor early on, he said. I listened to him pause for effect. I sent multiple emails questioning the risk assessment. But ultimately, Daniel signed off on moving forward. I felt my face flush with anger. I knew that was a lie. I remembered every conversation we'd had about that vendor. I recalled warning Mark about potential problems. I documented my concerns in writing. But Mark delivered his lie with perfect executive polish. I watched him maintain steady eye contact with the CEO. I noticed his body language remained calm and professional. I saw him position himself as the voice of reason who'd been overruled. Nobody questioned his version of events. I realized why. People like Mark were trusted by default. They had relationships. They had influence. They knew how to speak the language of upper management. People like me were expendable. I understood that now. I recognized I'd been useful when things went well. But when something went catastrophically wrong, I became the convenient explanation. Mark sat back down. I saw satisfaction flicker across his face for just a second. I realized he thought he'd won. I understood he believed his version would become the official record. He had no idea what was coming. HR placed me on administrative leave that afternoon. They called it pending review. I knew what it really meant. They were building a case to fire me. Security officer escorted me to my desk. I watched him stand there while I gathered my personal belongings. I felt my coworkers stare from their cubicles. I heard the silence that followed me through the office. They deactivated my access badge at the front desk. I handed over my laptop to IT. I watched them lock my email account remotely. I understood they were cutting me off from any evidence I might use to defend myself. I drove home in a daze. I sat in my apartment and replayed every meeting in my head. I remembered every conversation about that vendor contract. I recalled every warning I'd raised about moving too quickly. I thought about every approval chain. I visualized every memo I'd sent. I tried to remember exactly what I'd written in my emails to Mark. Then I remembered something important. Something Mark probably didn't think about when he blamed me in front of the entire board. Finance never deletes anything. I knew that from 8 years of working there. I understood their systems kept backups of every email. I recalled they maintained archives for audit purposes. Mark could delete messages from his sent folder. He could clear his inbox. He could remove conversations from his Slack. But finance kept copies of everything. Every email sent through company servers was stored permanently. Every approval request was logged and time-stamped. I picked up my phone and stared at it. I wondered if I should call someone in finance. I debated whether it would seem desperate. I worried they might not believe me either. Then my phone rang. The caller ID showed an internal company number. I answered cautiously. Hello. Maya Chambers? A woman's voice. Professional. Precise. This is Elaine Porter from Internal Finance Audit. I sat up straighter. I felt my heart rate spike. Yes, this is Maya. I'm calling about the vendor contract investigation, she continued. I heard no judgment in her tone. Just facts. I want to be clear up front. This audit isn't about assigning blame. It's about traceability. I swallowed hard. Okay. We're reviewing all documentation related to the approval process, she explained. I heard her typing on her keyboard. The board requested a complete forensic analysis of the decision chain. I understand, I said carefully. I didn't want to sound defensive or desperate. Elaine paused. I heard the typing stop. When she spoke again, her voice was lower. Almost confidential. Maya, I'm going to say something off the record. The paper trail we're finding doesn't match the narrative that was presented in that board meeting. I felt hope flicker in my chest. I tried to keep my voice steady. What do you mean? I mean, we've recovered emails that tell a very different story, she said. I heard certainty in her voice. I can't discuss details yet. But I wanted you to know we're looking at everything. And I mean everything. We talked for 20 more minutes. She asked me specific questions about dates and decisions. I answered as accurately as I could. I offered to provide any additional context she needed. When I hung up, I felt something I hadn't felt since that board meeting. I felt the smallest possibility that the truth might actually matter. 3 days later, Elaine called again. This time she asked me to come to her office. I drove to the company building feeling nervous. I used my temporary visitor badge to get through security. Elaine's office was small and organized. I saw filing cabinets lining one wall. I noticed a dual monitor setup showing spreadsheets and email threads. She gestured for me to sit. I watched her pull up several documents on her screen. I'm going to walk you through what we found, she said. I saw her open an email thread. These are time-stamped communications between you and Mark Ellison regarding the vendor contract. I leaned forward to read the screen. I recognized my own writing immediately. The first email was from me to Mark, dated 2 months before the contract was signed. I read my exact words. I have serious concerns about this vendor's capacity to deliver. I recommend we delay execution until we complete additional due diligence. I saw Mark's reply beneath it. Noted. But timeline constraints require we move forward. I'll take full responsibility for this decision. Elaine scrolled down. I saw more emails. I read my repeated warnings. I noticed Mark's consistent responses pushing forward despite my objections. Then she showed me something I'd never seen before. An email from Mark to the CFO. Sent the day before the contract was signed. I read the message. Maya is aligned on the vendor selection. Moving forward with execution per our discussion. I felt my blood run cold. I never said I was aligned. I never agreed to move forward. I know, Elaine said quietly. She pulled up another document. We also found this. The email she showed me next made my hands shake. It was from Mark to his assistant. Sent late at night. Marked as deleted from his sent folder but recovered from the server archive. I read the message slowly. If this vendor deal goes sideways, operations will absorb the heat. Make sure all communications emphasize Maya's involvement in the final decision. I looked up at Elaine. I felt rage and vindication mixing in my chest. He planned this. From the beginning, he planned to blame me if anything went wrong. That's what the evidence suggests, Elaine agreed. She printed several documents and placed them in a folder. There's more. We found chat logs where Mark instructed his team to remove him from certain email chains and add you instead. He systematically positioned you as the point person while maintaining final approval authority himself. I shook my head in disbelief. How did he think he'd get away with this? Because most people don't understand that finance keeps everything, Elaine said. I heard an edge in her voice. Mark deleted his copies. He probably assumed that was enough. But our systems maintain redundant backups. Every email sent through company servers is archived. Every chat message is logged. Every document is tracked. He handed me the folder. I saw my name on the tab. I noticed it was thick with printed evidence. The board is meeting again tomorrow, she told me. I heard the significance in her words. This time, I'm presenting the findings. Not HR. Not legal. Finance. I felt something shift in my chest. I recognized this feeling. It was hope. Real, solid hope that the truth would finally come out. Thank you, I said. My voice came out rough with emotion. Thank you for actually investigating. Elaine nodded once. I don't do politics, Maya. I do numbers. And the numbers don't lie. The next day I received an email. The board was reconvening. My presence was requested but not required. I debated whether to attend. I worried about facing those executives again. I remembered how they'd looked at me with judgment and disappointment. But I decided to go. I needed to see this through. I needed to watch the truth come out in the same room where I'd been blamed. I arrived early and sat in the back. I watched executives file in. I noticed Mark arrive last. I saw him look confident. I recognized he had no idea what was coming. The CEO called the meeting to order. I heard him introduce Elaine. I watched her stand and connect her laptop to the projector. Thank you for gathering, Elaine began. Her voice was steady and professional. I'm here to present the findings of our forensic audit into the vendor contract approval process. She didn't waste time with preamble. I watched her project the first email. The one where I'd explicitly warned Mark about the vendor risks. I saw several executives lean forward to read. I noticed the CFO's expression shift from neutral to concerned. Elaine walked through the entire timeline. She showed every warning I'd raised. She displayed Mark's responses pushing forward despite my objections. She revealed the emails where he'd misrepresented my position to upper management. Then she showed the deleted message. The one where Mark had explicitly planned to make operations absorb the heat if things went wrong. The room went completely silent. I watched faces change. I saw the CFO's expression harden. I noticed the CEO's jaw clench. I observed Mark's confidence drain away entirely. Nobody spoke. The emails on the screen said everything that needed to be said. The CEO broke the silence. I heard his voice come out cold and controlled. Maya, based on these findings, you're cleared of all responsibility for this loss. I felt relief wash over me. I watched him turn to face Mark directly. Mark Ellison, effective immediately, you're suspended pending termination review. You'll be escorted from the building today. Legal will be in contact regarding potential criminal charges for fraud and falsification of business records. I saw Mark's face go pale. I watched him open his mouth but no words came out. I noticed his hands were shaking. The CEO continued. The board will review this matter with our attorneys. But I want to be clear. This company will not tolerate employees who deliberately falsify records and scapegoat colleagues to cover their own poor decisions. Mark finally found his voice. This is a misunderstanding. Those emails are out of context. The emails have timestamps and metadata, Elaine interrupted calmly. I heard steel in her voice. They show a clear pattern of deception spanning 2 months. There's no context that makes this acceptable. I watched security officers appear at the conference room door. I saw them wait for instructions. The CEO nodded at them. Mr. Ellison, please go with security, the CEO said. I watched Mark stand slowly. I saw him look around the room desperately. I noticed nobody would meet his eyes. Everyone who had trusted him yesterday was looking away today. Mark's gaze landed on me. I saw fear in his expression. Not anger. Not defiance. Just pure fear. Because he understood what I'd learned weeks ago. Reputations don't survive audits. Truth doesn't care about charisma or connections. Evidence speaks louder than polish. Mark walked out escorted by security. I heard the conference room door close behind him. I felt the tension in the room shift. HR reinstated me the next day. I received a formal letter of apology from the company. I read it 3 times. I noticed they'd carefully worded it to avoid admitting legal liability while acknowledging they'd been wrong. They reactivated my badge. They returned my laptop. They restored my email access. They sent a correction memo to the entire department. The memo was brief and vague. It said the investigation had concluded. It stated I was cleared of any wrongdoing. It mentioned nothing about Mark's deliberate deception. It avoided all the messy details. I understood why. Companies don't like admitting they almost fired an innocent employee while protecting someone who'd committed fraud. They wanted this resolved quietly. Mark resigned before the termination became official. I heard through the grapevine that his lawyer had negotiated a quick exit. No press release. No public announcement. Just a quiet departure. But word traveled anyway. I learned that's how it works in corporate America. Official channels stay silent while unofficial networks spread the truth. People talked. Stories circulated. Mark's name became associated with fraud and scapegoating. 3 months later, the CEO called me into his office. I walked in wondering if there was more fallout. Instead, he offered me Mark's old position. Director of Strategic Partnerships. The role Mark had held before everything collapsed. I looked at the offer letter. I saw the salary increase. I noticed the expanded responsibilities and the impressive title. I thought about it for exactly 10 seconds. Then I declined. The CEO looked surprised. This is a significant opportunity, Maya. Why turn it down? Because I don't want his job, I said simply. I want my name clear. And it is. That's enough. I returned to my old role as Senior Operations Manager. I went back to fixing problems quietly. I continued working behind the scenes while others took credit. I maintained the same routine I'd had before everything exploded. Some people thought I was crazy for turning down the promotion. I heard colleagues whisper that I should have leveraged the situation for more. I knew they expected me to capitalize on my vindication. But they missed the point. I didn't want Mark's title. I didn't want his office or his salary or his seat at the executive table. I wanted something more valuable than any of that. I wanted my name clean. I wanted my reputation restored. I wanted the record to show the truth. And I had all of that. Because here's what they don't teach you in business school. Mistakes can be forgiven. Losses can be recovered. Companies move past failures all the time. But email trails never forget intent. Digital records don't care about charisma. Server logs don't respect political connections. The numbers tell the truth even when people try to hide it. I wasn't vindicated because I shouted or fought or played political games. I was vindicated because I'd documented everything. Because I'd raised concerns in writing. Because I'd created a paper trail that couldn't be erased no matter how hard Mark tried. The audit didn't just find a culprit. It revealed character. It showed who raised warnings and who ignored them. It demonstrated who told the truth and who manufactured lies. It exposed who took responsibility and who deflected blame. In the end, the truth didn't need me to defend it. The truth defended itself. I just had to wait patiently while finance did what finance does best. Follow the numbers. Track the evidence. Ignore the politics. In the corporate world, blame moves fast. Accusations spread quickly. Reputations collapse overnight. But truth? Truth waits patiently in the inbox. Truth sits quietly in the server logs. Truth exists in the metadata and timestamps and archived messages that nobody thinks about until an audit begins. And when truth finally speaks, everyone listens. Because unlike charisma or connections or carefully crafted narratives, truth brings receipts. I learned that lesson the hard way. I almost lost everything because I trusted the system to be fair. I almost became a statistic because I believed competence would protect me. Now I know better. I document everything. I maintain my own records. I create paper trails that can't be erased. Not because I expect the worst from everyone, but because I learned that in corporate America, the only protection you really have is evidence. The truth will set you free. But only if you can prove it.